Willkommen bei einer neuen Episode von Markenkraft. Für alle, die von Marken fasziniert und für ihr Wohlergehen verantwortlich sind. Welcome to another episode of Markenkraft. My name is Olaf Hartmann and my guest today is Magda Nenycz-Thiel. Magda is professor at the Ehrenberg Bass Institute for Marketing Science at the University of South Australia, famous for discoveries that guide evidence-based marketing. Magda has been the first Mars-funded chair at the Ehrenberg Bass Institute and led for 3 years the Mars Marketing Lab. Despite its large effects on business results, building a culture of evidence-based management practices is nothing for the faint-hearted. And Magda is one of the leading experts in the field and is helping organizations on their transformational journey to better marketing results through science. Together with her team, she pioneered the category growth research at the Ehrenberg Bass and founded the Industry Growth Initiative. Magda contributed to How Brands Grow Part 2, and her academic work has been published widely. She regularly presents at academic and industry conferences around the world and was an associate editor at the Journal of Advertising Research. Welcome, Magda. It's an honor to have you on the show.
Hello, thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
To warm up, I'll ask you just a quick fire round of questions. You can decide if you want to answer short or long. Just let the energy flow in the direction that you prefer. Mountains or beach?
Mountains.
Zubrowka or Penfolds?
Penfolds.
Beatles or Bach?
Bach? I played flute for 12 years in a music school, so I absolutely love classical music.
Right, the great Bach. Huh? All the musicians, they're in awe of Bach. Huh? It's like
it's the mathematics, it's the logic of it. I think that gets you, and it's just absolutely amazing. So yeah, I love it.
And we got one point there. Logic can be very, very beautiful. We just learned. Warsaw or Berlin?
Once again.
Warsaw or Berlin?
Oh, Warsaw or Berlin?
Oh, Warsaw. I'm sorry, I pronounced it wrong. Warsaw or Berlin?
That's okay. No problem. I love both, actually. I love both. Probably, spent more time in Warsaw as a child and had family there, and beautiful connotations. And I'm just about to go to Warsaw, but I equally love Berlin for how cosmopolitan it is, and just a cool place to spend time. So probably both.
You lived in Berlin as well?
No, I did not live it there, but I spent quite a lot of time just traveling and being there.
Right. Peter Drucker or David Aker?
None.
Byron Sharp?
Probably.
Snickers or Mars?
Politically correct. I think Snickers.
Okay. And what was the first money you earned?
The first money I've earned, I think it would have to be the money I've earned working for my dad in his kitchen place. So my dad is a kitchen designer. Actually, when the wall came down in the 90s, he quitted his kind of state company. He was working as an engineer, and he just said, I just have to do something different, something on my own. And he started selling kitchens. He was obviously taught then by many people, and he started designing and selling kitchens, and he's actually very successful in that. And then every summer I was making some small money by helping him and, trying to follow him and learn the craft of sales and learn how hard it is actually to sell. And also learn that it's a lot of science on how to sell things. So I probably did not sell one kitchen, but I was earning money just by helping him to sell the kitchen.
And you were observing, was your dad, I mean, if he was successful, he was a good salesman.
He is still. He
is at the time. But was there like a sales hack that you observed where you said like, that's interesting how he does that?
Yeah, I think he analyzed people very well, where they were from, and he he had a set of questions he was asking. He still has that set of questions he's asking. And through this, he could really relate. And, through this listening, he could then relate and almost make the sale kind of a byproduct of this whole, beautiful product and the experience. And, but it was very kind of predictable in some ways, like science is, right? So it was letting him know the person to the point where they could not live without signing the contract. It's just absolutely fascinating.
Oh, that's fantastic! I love that when I observe people doing that, and often it's about building the relationship, and then the sales happens. And if you try to push the sales, it doesn't happen because it destroys the relationship. And that also has a lot to do with brands. If brands behave that way, I think they become less attractive. You want to be just feel the magnetism of I really want that. I don't know how it happened, but I want it. That's really cool. So that was a good school. And what was the first paying job that you had, like a real paying job?
Okay, so probably outside of uni, where I was obviously when I we probably will be talking about this one, but I did some studies in Poland, and then I went to Germany to study in Germany for 6 months, where I stayed for 2.5 years. As life happens, we never, do what we planned. But I was helping students there, and then kind of the real kind of paid job, I think probably must have been my job at Nivea in Bayersdorf when I came back to Poznań after studying in Germany. And I was working in logistics. I was planning demand for Russia, I can remember. But I did it only for 6 months, realizing for many reasons it is not for me and it's time to move on.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. So you studied in Poland, you studied in Germany, you're married to a German. How did you end up becoming a marketing professor in Australia? How did that happen?
It's a great question, and definitely not a straightforward planned journey or, wanting to be a professor ever. Actually, I kept my last name, which is Nenycz, for my dad, because I was thinking I probably will take over his business. So it just tells you I had absolutely not plans doing a PhD and then a professorship. But when I did my 3 years of studies in Poland, I went to Germany for 6 months, and I stayed longer because I met my husband. So quite early on when I went there, I met this German guy who told me he just came back from Australia after doing his honors in Adelaide. And he told me that, he is going to go back because he's got already a PhD scholarship in Adelaide. I had no idea that Adelaide existed, by the way. And everyone told me that he loves me, so he will stay. Of course, he left. And, I said, okay, you left. I will just continue my studies. I finished my uni. I went back to Poland. I got the job. And after 6 months, I followed.
The heart was aching.
That's right. Came to Adelaide. Didn't know the language very well, actually, very, very little. And the only job you can get in Adelaide when you can't speak the language really well is selling charity memberships in supermarkets. So you have to find someone who will give you that $1 to save a panda or save the children. And I was doing this for 6 months, learning the language and, using my sales skills, which I learned from my father, how to make that sale. And probably because of my accent and, me reading the script very, very well from my page, I was actually selling a lot and earning quite good money. And then at some point, I think in some discussions with my parents, was like, you've got 2 masters and you could be starting doing something different with your life. And I started looking for another job. And so it was that we went to a barbecue with my husband, and there was someone who knew Byron. And they said, look, like you're in Adelaide, the one place where you can do something in marketing in Adelaide is actually the institute, which you just talked about before. And I said, okay, that's fine. I went and I asked for an interview. I had an interview. I was told that I have to do a presentation, and if I will stay, I have to do a PhD. And the rest is history, because I got the position, I got the scholarship, and I said, that's fine. I would just do a PhD. And I did my PhD with Jenny Romaniuk and Byron Sharp.
That's fantastic. It's a little bit like moving to Barcelona and somebody telling you, you play soccer. You know, there's this soccer club here. You might want to talk to these guys. You know, like. and then you end up in the team. That's fantastic. Just before we dive in now in your topic and research, I want to share because what I find interesting, what you say, observing your father standing on the street selling these panda saving subscriptions. I think that is a very, very good school to understand how marketing works. And I spent a year in the States as an exchange student, and there, you know, in the States they all do these communal activities, and one of them was like the Mr. Cougar contest. You know, we were the Cougars, the countryside high Cougars, and there was the Mr. Cougar contest. And the exchange student club, they took me, hey, you know, like, you're stupid enough to say yes to this, you're going to participate for us in the Mr. Cougar contest. So the first discipline was about collecting money. So basically selling your application in like participating. And 1 cent was 1 vote. And I went around and asked people, you know, I participated in the Mr. Cougar contest. Do you want to give some money? And it became so tiresome. And I was so disappointed. I was like, oh God, this is really terrible. And after the first day, I thought like, let's switch this around. Like you just said, like let them buy me by raising the attractiveness. So I went to the supermarket and bought this huge bag of gummy bears in a transparent bag. And I would just walk into the school and just wait people to ask me if they can have some gummy bears. And obviously I said, yeah, here, just take some gummy bears. And by the way, I participate in the Mr. Cougar contest. Would you like to contribute? You know, each cent counts. And in the end, I was thinking like, maybe I keep that money because I was getting close to collecting $180 within a week. And I was like, wow, this is a lot of money. But in the end, I gave it for charity. But this reminded me of this story. It's really interesting that you make this experience and observe how people react, and making them want something is always the better way of selling things. So now to your topic. You and your team are helping organizations to change to evidence-based management practices. Why is that necessary, and why do they need help doing it?
Great questions. Why is that necessary? I think the biggest problem which human beings have is relying on stories, is the storytelling. And if we rely on stories without the data and without being evidence-based in what we are doing, then this leads to a lot of confusion. It leads to a lot of waste, and at some point, it also leads to panic. So you know, we are confused because we don't know why something is working and why it is not, and we are going back to the strategy. We are changing the strategy all the time. Then it is a waste because we are putting money behind things which were never going to work. So they were always unlikely to happen. Sometimes it may work, but it may be just a fluke. They are actually not going to work. And finally, it's panic because we are throwing money at the wall. We are throwing things at the wall, and you know, we are trying to see if it sticks. But if it really doesn't happen, then people are panicking. So kind of the storytelling not being grounded in evidence-based approach leads to.
So let me clarify that. Yeah. So it's basically the story that people tell each other within the organization how success is actually happening. These stories, they are not reliable, or they have sources which are not evidence-based but experience-based, or even myths, like the Ehrenberg Bass loves to bust myths. So is that did you understand correctly? Yeah. Okay. So it's the mental model, people have in their heads about their own success.
Yeah, look, you know, there's a lot of opinions. There's a lot of pseudoscience. There's a lot of approaches which are simply are simply not based in data. It's not evidence based. And it is something like in physics you will have some laws which are the base of building every single building. Then how the building looks like, if it is beautiful or it's structured this way, well, maybe not structured, but it looks this way or it has this color. That's the execution of it. So kind of the evidence based part in our field, in the field of growth, will be your strategy, and you want to have the strategy based on those empirical findings, on the fundamentals laws, on what we know is more likely to happen, and you want to free up the time and the creativity and the talent for the execution bit. So you don't want to argue all of that. You don't want to argue the strategy. This should be sound. This should be based in evidence. You want to give people that freedom then to be creative around the execution. So that's kind of the main reason why it is so important.
Right. So basically you give the organization the mental backbone that they structure their building around. And the building can have many shapes, but the backbone, the structure of how buildings are held up, that's basically what you give them. But
you can definitely say so, yeah.
Yeah, but this is, you even call it yourself. It's basically about changing the culture of thinking about these things. And Peter Drucker famously said, like, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So changing a culture is a very complex task that often fails. So what is your experience, and what is maybe the secret sauce of actually leading this to success?
I think the secret, I guess there's no secret, but I think first it is making people aware just how weak foundations can lead to decisions which are, again, unlikely to succeed. So what you are trying to do, you want to increase the odds of your investment. So we are all investing with our money, right? And you want to make sure that you are putting more money behind things which are more likely to happen. So that's kind of the culture of you are investing the money anyway. So let's make sure that in your investment decisions you are putting the money behind things which are more likely to lead to growth. And making people aware of those things. So first, that their beliefs are perhaps not in line with evidence, one. Second, that the evidence is in their data. So, we can talk a lot about evidence-based marketing or, using the jargon, but actually really showing the fundamental patterns of buying behavior, the kind of low-like patterns in the data of the organization is a massive, this is what it is. And finally, really making them aware of the implications of what does it actually mean for the investments if you don't invest in an evidence-based way. So, if your beliefs are against what actually the evidence will be saying. I think those three things, making people aware what the beliefs are, then showing this in their data and really linking this to what does it mean in their daily life if they don't put the money behind things which are more likely to happen.
This is very rich, so I would like to parse it a little bit, like start with the first part, which making people aware that their mental models are wrong. That is already a huge task. It's like, first of all, many people are not even aware that they have certain mental models. It's just about feeling what is right and what feels right and what feels wrong. So, and it sounds very logical the way you describe it, but I'm sure the process, like I would be very interested, like what is the process? How can you, in a non-offensive way, because I could imagine that people also feel very threatened suddenly when when their mental models are challenged. So how do you go about that? Like how do you basically create these eureka moments where they say, oh yeah, right, for 30 years I've been thinking this, and actually it's based on not a strong foundation.
So it usually starts with an individual who wants that change. So you have to want a change to happen, But then once you have that kind of permission to challenge the organization and to assist the organization in the journey, what we do, we constructed a 20 questions benchmarking survey. It's an evidence-based benchmarking survey. And all of the questions, if you answer correctly, the questions are constructed in a way that the correct answer is what is more likely to happen. So say penetration is the key lever for growth for brands, right? Loyalty is secondary, loyalty follows penetration. Penetration is what you should be aiming for. So if you answer that right in the questionnaire, then it is right, and you are more likely to have growth for a brand. And then you are doing this benchmarking survey within the organization, and it is obviously never linked to any individual. So while it may be threatening in some way or form, it's never the individual that is actually identified at the end, because that's not about that. It is to show a few different things. The first one is the alignment. So, even if we are aligned behind the wrong things, at least we have alignment. Mm-hmm. But if we are not aligned in the organization behind anything, you can look at each other and say, what is our hope of having an evidence-based growth philosophy if we don't align on anything, right? So it's a massive aha, and like a moment when people say, we want to be aligned. If we want to have an evidence-based growth philosophy, and I'm not saying that there are some things which should create some tension and good discussion. I think there's place for this too, absolutely, because this then creates probably something even bigger. But there are some fundamentals where you don't want that to happen, which are actually, again, fundamental laws, which then it's very important to follow up with, does it hold on our data? Do we see this across markets? Do we see this across different conditions? How does online look like, and media, and so on? So making sure that we see that and people understand that, oh my God, this is not only in a book. This is not only theory. We can see this in our data every single day. And only if we look at the data in the right way, everyone will see those patterns. So it is inspiring, it is calibrating, and it's provocative, but it's not confrontational, because it is actually bringing people together, Olaf, rather than separating people from each other. And then, we see first kind of the alignment. So it's, more than 75% aligning with, okay, that's high. That's pretty much alignment. Less than 75%, you should be thinking about this. And then we see areas where people are agreeing behind, high agreement behind the wrong answer, and unpacking this, why is that happening? And then where is the misalignment? Where do we actually sit on the fence? When do we need some good discussions, challenge, more data to make sure that we are coming to an agreement on those areas being evidence-based as well. So the building block to you having an evidence-based culture is having a set of those beliefs which are based in evidence on which the majority of the organization agrees on.
Okay, that answers the question very, very well. So basically the personal confrontation is not happening. It's basically the summary of, it's like a knowledge audit you do. You basically do a knowledge audit with the management and give them the 20 laws, basically, or principles you've identified, and see where they are. Are they closer to the truth, or are they closer to some myth? Yeah, and then you know what to work on. All right, that makes a lot of sense. So once that happens, so you basically have that that audit, and then you can identify the first parts you need to work on just to create a common understanding. Within the management team. And you say 75% of all employees, or 75% of the management?
It actually depends on the organization. The organizations are structured differently. Sometimes it is the leadership team. Sometimes we are looking at the top 100. Depends on the organization, how they want to go. Do they want to compare different teams? Some organizations are quite competitive. So it is more about, where are the pockets of knowledge sitting. But in my opinion, it's good to have the leadership done first, and then the rest of the organization, because again, without the top agreeing on something, what hope do we have for the rest of the organization to follow as well? And it's good to surface the biggest tensions at the top quite quickly, and then work on them and really see where the needs are for more data, for learning, for understanding the culture, to your point. understanding that as well, because this is also a lot of flowing effect into what are we actually believing on. And by culture, I mean how we are rewarded. It's a very important point, right? Because this will then drive a set of different behaviors. This will drive the metrics we are looking at, and metrics drive our philosophy, right? So it is, you can unpack some of this in the survey and some of this actually in the interviews with people, because you can only learn so much from just numbers from the survey or from the data when you look at the patterns. So actually talking and understanding that that culture is also really important.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And what is like in that? Have you experienced on that way like certain like resistance? What are the most common mistakes that people make? If you say the three things that I see most often, that organizations are aligned behind something which is which is not based in evidence, but also misleads them.
From like the fundamental laws, because there are also some questions about some metrics, which I'm not going to go through, but from the fundamental laws, I guess, the belief in advertising needing to be persuasive, which is driving how we think about advertising. So, that we have to persuade people to buy rather than remind them that we exist and refresh and build a memory structure.
That's what we discussed in the beginning, It's like we just discussed that persuasion is not the most powerful source. It's more the drawing in, the salience of something attractive.
Science. That's right. And, building the category entry points. I know you spoke to Jenny Romanuk, and, she is the world expert on category entry points. So really making sure that we are thought widely in our consumers' memories. So this will be one of the points where, we see a lot of this persuasion still happening there. Linked to this probably will be relying on attitudes rather than seeing attitudes as something which comes after behavior and relying on attitudes to predict behavior. That's something which is still quite apparent in the organizations. And from
that is baked into the persona thinking. Is that baked into the persona thinking? It's like that's what you mean, like that you try to describe attitudes as stable.
It is relying on attitudes for prediction for the future, so that we can, you can ask people about what are they going to do or how they feel about something, and looking at the attitudes, and then think that this will actually predict behavior. Whereas we know that behavior actually comes first, right? The correlation between attitudes and behavior is actually quite weak. We're only human beings. You can think about our attitudes towards being environmental or saving the planet, and yet what we do quite often is not what we say we are going to do. So, and this is driving a lot. So it may be just something which, for us is something to discuss, but actually it is driving a lot of things like the research and what data are we relying therefore on to, predict big things in the business, which is really important. What are we actually focusing on when it comes to our consumers? And the one from kind of the fundamental laws, I think the one around small brands having the ability to have really high loyalty. There are some brands which suddenly will have this exceptional loyalty beyond reason. That's something which unfortunately is still something which perpetuates, and kind of I think the era of we need to have small brands I hope has ended. I think big brands know that the biggest advantage they have over the small brands is their size, and just the sheer number of people who have some memory structures about them and the distribution they have. But there is still some belief that we can have very high loyalty on small targeted brands, which again is a myth. Small brands, as you know, have usually lower loyalty than big brands. They've got fewer consumers, and those consumers also buy them slightly less often, which again, if you have that belief, you are focusing on the wrong metrics, you are rewarding the wrong metrics, you are celebrating the wrong wins, and again, it is not allowing you to focus on exceptional execution. It is making your strategy being really wrong, because it is not looking at the right patterns and metrics.
These are three very, very strong points. I would just just to clarify the middle one, because I think that some people might have heard, attitudes don't predict behavior. That is a very, very strong, and habits do. That's what you said, and that is something that is in the first thing is counterintuitive. But what psychological research also found, that we always have this tendency of trying to be consistent. So we always watch ourselves, the way we behave, and afterwards we generate why we behaved like that. So and I think that what was the name of him? I forget. There was one change management coach who phrased that in a very good way. It's easier to act your way into a new way of thinking than to think your way into a new way of acting. So that summarizes very well that second point. And I think that I would like to stress that for the listeners, because this is something widely misunderstood as this mind-behavior gap, that you ask explicitly people, so what are you going to do? Are you going to buy the product? Are you going to save the planet? Yeah. And then you see what they do.
It's very dangerous, Olaf, in the innovation area, where if that's how we do our innovation research, if that's how we are trying to see whether someone will buy it, and then we are very disappointed that this doesn't happen, right? Because many people will say, yes, give it to me. But then you look at the market, and, if the case for innovation is not based on good evidence on what does the category need for growth, meaning is that, addressing a penetration barrier or addressing the kind of more premium segment, we've got no hope for innovation working if we're just relying on asking people.
Yeah, and innovation is one thing, and also communication themes also, because people say, yeah, we want more sustainable products, and then you suddenly pick sustainability as your key component without realizing that it's not a driver for purchase. It's just something that people say they want it, and it's a nice hygiene factor in the end. They want to feel good, but it's not the icebreaker basically to get through to actually initiate the purchase. So that's very good. So so we got these three most common mistakes. And let me ask you, like, in this is a process. What time frame are we talking about? Like, to teach an organization evidence-based thinking? Like, what is your experience?
There's no time frame, really. I think it is.
It happens within 2 weeks. Like, you arrive, and 2 weeks later, everybody's a minimum. What's the minimum?
It is a transformation, and it's, some of this we can start and help the organization do. Quite a lot has to happen internally. So you leave the organization with some kind of roadmap, and with obviously opportunity to advise and give help and train and communicate and mentor. But it is actually a lot up to the organization how it will then get organized, how it will organize itself around what we call expect what you inspect. So all the metrics and what you're actually looking at to expect change. So a lot of those things, like capability building internally, the metrics, and setting up the learn, test, learn culture to make sure that it's not like, you are seeing a new set of data, or you are looking at e-com and you are saying, oh, the laws don't hold. Like, no, you should be learning. You should be thinking. They might, like, it can be a condition, but the learning culture should be, I'm going to have a look first before I say, out with the old, in with the new, no? So those kind of three blocks, which come after the beliefs, they take time, Olaf. They take time, they take discipline and grit. And for this, it's years, and organizations are becoming more and more evidence-based as they go. And sometimes they go a few steps back to go a few steps forward. The new changing environment of, media and retailing doesn't help, because again, it takes people to, everything is new. So definitely our strategies are wrong. Whereas, we should be learning about how to execute in the new world, and not changing strategy with every single new thing coming to the world. Like, if we do this, if our strategies are not sound and not something we believe in are based in empirical evidence, then we are really exposed to changing that strategy instead of, again, focusing on exceptional execution in all those different conditions, which probably are changing and will be changing for the future. So to answer your question, it takes time, and it takes the leadership, really brave leadership within the organization, and good organization internally having those champions of evidence-based thinking, but also, I guess, building the muscle of being both skeptical and open-minded at the same time. So, and that's the learning which comes in, things are happening, so you want to learn about them, but being extremely skeptical about everything which is new, and having the same scrutiny of looking at the data as you will have for any other question. So it takes a lot of time.
Right. But it makes you immune if it happens then against the shiny new thing. You can look at the shiny new thing with a set of eyes that see chances, so you don't let chances go by. But it's not like you have to jump on every train that is passing the station.
Yeah, I think it's going back to the analogy of being a good investor, Olaf. You will not be putting all your money into something which has just appeared on the share market and is shiny and new. You'll be first having some safe bets, and you're understanding the odds of those bets, and that's what you are investing in. Yes, you can have some more risky bets, and say 20% or 10% of your budget will be on those riskier bets to learn for the future how you go. And sometimes it might be amazing, but probably quite a lot it will be hopefully productive failure. So you'll learn something from it. But I think the investor's mindset and being evidence-based in how you invest your money, meaning you have safe bets based on evidence, based on what happened in the past, and then you are learning with the more risky bets on things which are new.
Yeah, I'm sure you're aware of Taleb, Nicholas Taleb, the one that wrote The Black Swan. Because what you're just describing is very similar to what he describes, like the barbell strategy. It's like having a heavy emphasis on things that have always been solid and reliable and so on, and then invest in something like very volatile that you are ready to lose, and just stay away from the middle. The gray ground. And he also said that there's like a relationship between, if something has been around for a very, very long time, the chance of it being around still for a very, very, very long time is very, very high. Yeah, so that goes against the kind of habit that we have in marketing, that we always predict the death of TV, the death of print, the death of everything.
Big brands.
And when it has been exact death of brands and all that. Last question before we turn to you hinted at the topic of category growth, which I would like to turn on next, but just what is, like, when you embarked on that journey with an organization, what are the indicators that you feel, we're starting to succeed? Are there certain indicators that you watch out for where you feel, the message has sunk in, the organization is starting to transform? What are these early signs?
Some amazing questions coming from people. So instead of saying, this is all wrong, or, it is hard, that this is interesting, like let's discover this, or let's do this, or really starting to be on that. Our strategy is sound, so we don't have to be paranoid about reinventing the strategy, but let's learn about how to execute well. And you can see that in the questions which are then coming to us, with the challenges, with the projects, with how people think about this as something really exciting and liberating rather than restricting, which sometimes, if you think about this, Olaf, laws or laws of marketing, fundamentals can feel quite heavy for the organization, especially for the kind of more creative people. And I think once the understanding is there that they actually give you freedom to be creative, because you can finally not worry about so many different things. You are putting some kind of structure, to your point at the beginning, some mental model around how are you going to operate. You've got the main levers, that they are sound. And then you start thinking, okay, so, what do I need to learn still? How am I going to address those challenges in the mental and physical availability area? And that's fun. That's definitely when you start thinking, okay, now we can actually change the world.
Yeah. These are very good points. So the quality of the question, like the organization learns to to ask better question, and a sense and energy of curiosity. And when the creative people realize, it's not that I'm limited completely in my creativity. It's like in the metaphor of the building, the way you shape the outside of the building and whatever is you can build so many different buildings once you know the law of gravity and the law of structure, the static laws. That is fantastic, and you can build buildings that nobody has seen before. So there's no limit to creativity. Just the chance of your creativity making a difference is much higher. So that's the positive narrative of this. Why this journey is really worth embarking on. Great. So this leads us to, you're heading also the Industry Growth Initiative at the Ehrenberg Bass. What is it and what does it aim for?
Okay, it's a great question. So as you know, for many years, the Institute has been focusing on how brands grow, and that's how our books are called. And, it was all about brands, which was the right starting point. The Industry Growth Initiative, or the category growth research, is adding the layer of category growth. And it is because the health of leading brands, especially leading brands, depends heavily on the health of the categories they operate within. So the growth of the categories. So our research has shown that up to 70% of growth for bigger brands will come from category growth. So understanding how do categories grow, understanding the conditions, are there differences between smaller and bigger? What are the main factors which will differentiate categories? What does it mean for how to set up an ambition for category performance? Therefore, what will be the levers to pull in a category given category conditions? And what we are finding is that the main condition which we have to look at is the category maturity. So, how mature, to your point, it is a category that has been around for a long time. You've got different expectations for that category. It may not grow that much, but probably it will also not decline that much, right? Yeah. So you've got
banking has been around for whatever 500 years, so there's a chance that it's not going to collapse tomorrow.
Yeah, similar with chocolate or something like this. But then you've got some categories which are, and this depends a lot by market, because maturity of categories differs between geographies, between markets, and our findings are showing that those kind of immature categories grow in different ways. So you set different, again, going back to our investments, you set different objectives, because those kind of immature categories, they're coming into the market and they can grow a lot, but they can also decline a lot. So kind of understanding the bets you are putting on them, and then the levers you pull between mature and non-mature categories differ as well. So it is a layer of research which is allowing, again, organizations to make better investment decisions, kind of starting from the category and then moving on to brand. Why is it so important? It's important because if you think about two sources of growth, organic growth, you've got market share and you've got category growth, no? And I have nothing against market share, but if you look over time at gains from market share, sustainable gains from market share, what is the research telling us is that only about 1 in 10 brands will have market share gains over, say, 6 years' time. It's hard, sustainable gains in market share is rare, and it is hard. There's a lot of short-term market share gains, but they are mostly driven by very toxic practices, and mainly they are price promotions and limited time offerings. So you can drive market share very quickly if you are rewarded on share and you want to get share in that week or a month or a quarter. You can price promote very quickly. You can release limited time offering. It can give you a very short term boost, but that's all very much short term thinking. It is not doing anything good to your long term brand health. So it is, if you think about price promotions over time, they only devalue the brand. They are not, and it's also something which is not creating any advantage. You are doing something in 1 week, your competitor is doing something another week. It's shifting share. It's not gaining share. It's actually shifting and stealing, not building anything.
And you're creating habits for people to wait for the next promotion. So they stop buying your product at regular price and just, there's going to be another promotion around. I'll wait for that. Could you give some examples? Yeah. Could you give some examples of different categories that actually grew? I have some examples in my head, but... Like coffee, for example, coffee. Like coffee was a category. Like if you think back 25 years ago, coffee. What was coffee in the States? And then Starbucks came around, and Nespresso came around, and that's probably one example that the category of coffee generated so much more value overall. The turnover that is done with coffee is
coffee is actually very interesting, Olaf. Coffee is interesting. Coffee, has been, bad quality coffee in supermarkets has been a while for a very, very long time. And the coffee was only becoming cheaper and cheaper, right? And then the culture of the coffee drinking outside of the grocery was really developing. And you were paying, I don't know what you pay in Germany at the moment, but you can pay in Australia $4 for a cup of coffee, right? Outside of the supermarket, or $5. And it was actually a time in the US where the culture of having a coffee in a cafe was already there. So it was quite expensive, but supermarkets were still quite cheap. So you've got this massive discrepancy. And at some point, the coffee capsules arrived, which are kind of in between, right? They are not your corner coffee, maybe a corner cafe coffee, but they're also not your very bad tasting instant coffee, So then you can see how the category is growing through premiumization, through the coffee capsules, and the whole category is growing through price mainly, but also it's bringing some people from outside of the grocery to grocery, and you've got a massive category growth coming from this one part of the category. But yes, to your point, the behavior was already out there outside of the supermarket. People were already buying coffees in coffee shops, right? And there's many examples of this. And so this one is kind of category growth through coffee capsules around the world, and especially in the pricing area, you can charge 300% more per coffee capsule than the instant coffee. But plenty of different examples. So we've got, you probably have the same in Germany, the plant-based drinks instead of milk are everywhere now. So you can have your oats, milk, and almonds and whatever. It's not only the dairy milk which you can have your coffee with.
Yeah, one other example that came to mind, also the toothbrush market. With the invention of the electric toothbrush, if you think about how much money people are spending on toothbrush today, if you compare that 30 years ago, is that also would you call that premiumization? Oh, that's a difficult word. Could you pronounce that for me?
Premiumization.
Premiumization.
Yeah,
okay.
Is
is it more technical development of the category?
Both. I mean, it depends how you look at this, but yes, it is making the category more premium, charging more per unit. So that's one example. But yes, you've got categories emerging, like you've got hard seltzer in the US, which grew massively a few years ago, and now it is unfortunately in decline. You've got ready to drink drinks like the cocktails.
Could you explain that? I'm sure that my listeners, hard seltzers, just to explain so they understand the example. What how would you define hard seltzers?
Oh, so they haven't arrived in Germany yet, or you've got them on shelves?
They're there, but not everybody.
It's like soda with a hint of some kind of flavor, with either brewed or with vodka. So it is a alcoholic drink. Kind of, you almost don't feel that you drink alcohol, but you do, and it's fizzy and it has some kind of flavor. And so you had a massive boom in that category, like really over 5 years, amazing growth, and now it's stalled at some point. You've got plant-based meats. Again, that those offerings in the UK are taking more and more of the shelves with
But they seem to have trouble now in the recession. That they used to grow a lot, and then now suddenly things are not looking so good at the moment. But it's normal in these developments. Yeah.
Yes, and you can also see how the big growth in some categories will be happening for some time, and then they can either go further or they will decline. So we see that volatility on that part of the maturity, where can be boosted, but it can be also. Yeah.
Right. How do you identify, if you're in a certain category, how do you identify if your category has potential for growth?
So it's a very interesting question. You do this. So if you are in one market, you can start very easily just by looking at the same category in, say, 15 other markets, and say, okay, so I'm in Germany, and I'm in a category of chewing gum. and I'm asking myself, can my category grow? And I'm doing a mapping of the same category across 15 markets. And I'm like, is there a market where the category is bigger? It's your first question, right? Like, and why is that bigger? And what have they done for this category to be bigger? And you say, okay, actually, there is a lot of headroom for growth. And I'm just kind of saying this because I actually kind of will. But yeah, I think there is headroom for growth for that category. But first, it's a very simple exercise on benchmarking. Benchmarking are extremely powerful. Global benchmarking is extremely powerful exercise. So you probably should do this first before you go anywhere else to see how your category is performing. And then you've got plenty of other metrics like your growth of the category. And we compare this to our benchmarks, which we developed in the institute as well, looking at, is your category growing as fast as it should, given the maturity that it has, and so on and so forth. But I will definitely start first with looking around the world and understanding the headroom.
I have one last question about the category growth research that you've done, because I already said Ehrenberg Bass loves to debunk myths, and there are certain. You also talk about myths in this field. Could you share some of those myths that are about premium products and premiumization? I have to learn that word in a category.
Yeah, so I guess when it comes to premiumization, I guess the main problem with this is that organizations go into that first too quickly and with not thinking that they have to still build penetration for the premium products, but they have to have a lot of premium products. So that's something which you have to grow the market. You need to shift the volumes to that and really invest in this and build in this rather than introduce a lot. But the problem also is that it depends on the maturity of the market whether you should or you shouldn't. So if you are in the early stages of maturity of a category, there we recommend, and our research is showing, building the core and covering the market well, understanding the market well, and covering the market well with your portfolio, and just driving mental and physical availability for that core is what you should be doing. If you are at more mature category development stages, then you can be thinking about, do I have something behind which I should be investing because the category will be growing through value? Or do I need to start developing this? But it's definitely not for all. And there are big dangers of starting something far too soon or introducing a lot of premium offerings and not growing any, because there's a lot of cannibalization then between those options, and the volumes at the beginning will be small anyway, because they are somewhat a little bit more premium than everything else. So patience and time is very important. But I think the main thing is we should not have a menu of introductions for all markets. We should have introductions which are just for particular markets given where they are on their category maturity. So very important implications for your portfolio strategies from the category growth research.
My really last question is, you have the chance to put a screensaver on all the people responsible for brands and marketing around the world. What would that screensaver say?
Be skeptical and open-minded.
Be skeptical and open-minded. Great. Well, that's a perfect finish. It was a very, very inspiring conversation. Thank you very much for your time and generosity also to share all your insights.
Pleasure.
If people want to find you, what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, it's definitely looking for Magda at Marketing Science Info. marketingscience.info. So I've got an email with just Magda at. My last name is quite hard to pronunciate. So there's
so you
big,
to avoid mix
this.
Up and it's so Magda at Marketing Science
That's
Institute.
right. But also I don't think there's any other Magda Nenycz-Thiel. So just looking for Magda Nenycz-Thiel and you will find me anywhere.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks again. I wish you all the best in your mission to teach the marketing world more evidence-based thinking for better results. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Olaf.
Und das war eine weitere Episode von Markenkraft. Vielen Dank, dass Sie dabei waren. Wir hoffen, es hat Ihnen genauso viel Freude gemacht wie uns. Wenn ja, empfehlen Sie uns, Ihren Freunden, Ihren Bekannten, Ihren Kollegen und bewerten Sie uns auf iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Soundcloud, egal wo Sie diesen Podcast hören. Share the love for brands. Machen Sie es gut für sich und die Menschen in ihrem Leben.